This week on the Quad, we're unpacking the slanders, we're unpacking the lies, and we're looking at exactly what's been going on with aid in Gaza. And as usual, many scumbags, many heroes, some very special guests, only on JNS, only on the Quad. And welcome back, everybody, to the Quad. And this week, Shoshana and Emily are traveling, but I have some incredible co-hosts here in the studio with me. Ruthie Blum, senior contributing editor to JNS and co-host of her own show, Israel Undiplomatic. Why would they say that about you, Ruthie?
I wonder why.
I wonder why. Rawan Osman, who is a Syrian-born advocate for Israel's normalizing in the region and a good friend of the show. Rawan, welcome back.
Thank you.
And the wonderful and energetic Meira K, who is a political analyst, and she has her own show on JNS too, which is called The Meira K Show. And let me tell you, these are the women of JNS, plus our good friend and always perpetual guest, Rawan Osman. Okay, ladies, so we have a situation on our hands this week. Oh, not like we don't have one every week, but this particular week, we have been libeled, slandered. I mean, not that we weren't for the last year and a half, but there's been an intensity this week. We've got 4 European countries, and Canada, of course, they always jump in, condemning us, calling for sanctions on us. We've got the Foreign Minister of the UK, the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, saying that there are sanctions on us. Meanwhile, of course, the UK trades with the worst human rights abusers in the world to the tune of £20 billion. But never mind, they reserve their double standards just for us. And the onslaught of incredibly damaging lies against Israel. One of those lies, of course, is that 14,000 babies will die as starving and will happen in the next 24 hours. Watch this.
There are 14,000 babies that will die in the next 48 hours unless we can reach them. This is not food that Hamas are going to steal.
How they know it's 14,000 and not 4 or 3 or 10, maybe one day will be elucidated, or maybe we'll find out that it's another blood libel like what we've been hearing for the last year and a half. Either way, if there are babies starving in Gaza, and we're not sure there are, it's all Hamas's fault because they steal the aid, and this is how they fund their terrorism. And this is the only reason why Israel said, let's stop, because that was the way that the war was being perpetuated by Hamas, through stealing the aid, selling it back to those innocent people, and funding and paying for their terrorists. But it seems the world, as usual, is blind. Ruthie, help me out here. What the hell is going on?
Okay, first of all, it's not the whole world. And yes, we have many enemies in the Middle East and in Africa, for example. But the Western world, the members of the Western world who are against us happen to be, guess what, mainly on the left. Yes, there are far-right extremists who also are anti-Semitic and hate Israel. But we're talking about, if you notice, Canada, France, the UK, guess who won their elections? That's right. And their oppositionists do not feel that way about Israel at all.
That's true, because we see that in Spain. I've had a lot of arguments this week on Spanish media. They literally called me a Nazi exterminator on Spanish mainstream TV. And half the country hate the government and write to me saying, they do not represent us. So you're 100% right what you're saying. It's mainly coming from left-wing European and non-European governments. Rawan, you're out there, and you are somebody who also analyzes the Arab press. What are they saying about all this? Is there more demonization than normal, or is it just part and parcel of the entire narrative that they have?
Every time Israel is condemned, this is celebrated in the Arab world.
Of course.
And this applies not only to Al Jazeera, but also media outlets who advocate or support or celebrated the Abraham Accords. Now, they cannot deny it if the West, the friends of Israel in the West, are saying it. Look, it's a genocide. People are dying. And you know what makes it even better?
Yeah.
When the far left in Israel echoes these messages.
And that's terrible.
When people, Jews, Israeli Jews, accuse themselves and their country of blood libels. This is the non-stop message narrative in the Arab world. And remember, hundreds of millions are absorbing, internalizing the blood libels as a fact. This is what's happening in Gaza.
Well, it's extremely depressing, especially because all of us here around the table believe in normalization of Israel in our region. Some of us have been big advocates for the Abraham Accords, and they seem to be kind of holding strong. Trump even asked our friend al-Shara al-Jalani to join the Abraham Accords. How do you see the whole, seeing as you're Syrian and you're here, we need to ask you, how do you see the whole Trump-Syria, taking the bounty out of his head and helping him, I guess, establish his rule in Syria? How do you see that as a Syrian refugee, I'm assuming, because you had to leave the country?
I didn't live for long in Syria because I had a problem with the culture in general. So, having said that, I have conflicting feelings. On one side, it is embarrassing that the only Syrian they could find to replace al-Assad is a former Al-Qaeda member, surrounded, his entourage are mostly former ISIS and Qaeda members. So this is embarrassing, and they have blood on their hands. On the other hand, I understood from the beginning that Israel would have never allowed the jihadists and the Syrian rebels to advance from Idlib, take the second biggest city in Syria, Aleppo, and then Hama, Homs, arriving in Damascus only in 11 days. Israel could have stopped them the same way they were killing any Hezbollah senior member who fled Lebanon to Syria. They could have stopped it, and yet they have not. Just yesterday, there were reports by Americans and British who said, this is not random, what's happening in the region. No, President Trump is not naive. He knows the history of Ashara or Al-Julani, as his nom de guerre is more famous. He was prepared, groomed to replace Assad. At least we have closed the corridor between Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Is this an easy task? Is it not playing with fire? Of course it is. And he is often reminded that the sanctions were lifted, that there is no longer a bounty on your head, but you have to follow the plan. And the West helped implement the plan for the sake of the Syrian people. Being half Syrian, I know, and I have to always remind people, the Syrians for more than a decade are eating from garbage. More than 4 million Syrian men are unemployed.
Wow.
People, if they have a job, not in rural areas, in Damascus, the capital city of Syria, earn an average of $18 per month, while a kilo of mincemeat costs $10. Wow. So when people accuse me of being indifferent to the suffering of people in Gaza, I have to remind them that I am Syrian and ask them when was the last time they protested what was happening to the Syrians.
They never did. Even when they were chemically gassed, they never did. Meira, you break stories every day. You're very active on reacting quickly. How do you see things this particular week? It's been a tough week.
Well, I think, there's two different things going on, and I always struggle with this balance. There's the very, very frustrating kind of coming forth of proof of what we've been saying since the beginning of this war. The Israeli extreme left can be one of our biggest enemies.
Oh, yeah.
People out there will go as far as say as big as Hamas, and I don't think that. I think Hamas is our ultimate enemy, this kind of Islamic terrorism. But the people from within who can't understand the ramifications to their actions because they're fighting a petty internal political war. They don't realize the damage that they do going outwards. And
they don't realize. I agree with you.
And I think that they really feel like they're advocating for what's right, that they're trying to bring down this kind of Netanyahu dictatorship. And it's unbelievably frustrating to watch as somebody who has an understanding of both internal media and external media, the damage that they do with these statements and things that they do. They just propagate the external media is happy to take one really, really niche person from Israel, take their message and just throw it out as if it's the entire Israeli people. And I could swear on this, that this is not what the majority of Israelis feel, that they're just so against such statements. I mean, even politically, there's just been an uproar, but yet here they are time and time again coming out saying these things. So that's been on just a personal level really frustrating. But externally, look, these lefties look for any opportunity they can to come after us. It's unbelievable. Like they will take anything. A lie spreads fast. The truth takes a long time to catch up, right? They'll take anything as ridiculous, 14,000 babies in 24 hours. I mean, anyone with a brain can look at that, analyze that, understand. There's no factual way to even know about it. And by the way, can we talk about the fact that they've been saying that we're just murdering babies? How are there, like, you're like, no, there's so many babies around for us to just be killing in 24 hours. It's still
And if it's having babies, then they are eating, right? I love your analogy.
No, it's true.
Rawan's logic. If they're having babies, by the way, 30,000 babies were born in the last year.
How? If you have the energy to make babies, you must be eating. So either we're starving them to death, or you're killing babies.
You see the videos of the people who say we're starving them. They're all buff. They're all look good. And look, again, you've probably said this a million times. The only genocide in the world where there are more people at the end of it than when we began. None of the lies hold any sort of ground. It's just clear that in these European countries, they're looking for ways to get their lefty voters to be happy with them. So they're just, if it's to attack Israel, they see it works. They come at us, even if the sanctions, look, the trade deal with Europe does more for Europe than it does for Israel at the end of the day. They're the ones destroying it. It's just a chance to come off the Jews. It's unbelievable to watch.
Ruthie, do you get concerned about being isolated in the world?
No, not in the least bit. And I never did. And I think, first of all, that business about isolation is a big lie. As Meira said, so many countries need us just as much, if not more, than we need them.
Yeah.
Okay. And this narrative about isolation, if you do this, you'll be isolated. First of all, I hope I'm isolated from evil forces. I don't want to be not isolated by them. Also, I think it's a point we have to stress again and again. Europe loves to have other people fight its battles since World War II, as I have to say. They just love that. And then they love to attack people who are actually standing up and actually trying to win a war. That's one thing. Number two, what they don't realize, those countries that are attacking us, they don't realize that what their governments are kowtowing, cowering before their jihadi populations, their jihadist electorates. And if they think that October 7th can't happen in Paris or London or Ottawa, they're mistaken.
I'm going to fight back on you because I think that they do know. They are aware of the fact they are up against a terrible problem in these European countries. They know for a fact that the jihadis are coming for them next. And I think this is just a last attempt to make their voters happy because the people in Europe are freaking out, okay? The right are freaking out. That's why the extreme right parties are coming in. They're freaking out about this kind of Islamization of their countries. So they left Israel helping because they're trying to do everything they can to direct people's attention from the real problems at hand and to focus on an enemy state. They're trying to say, look, Israel's really the problem. The Islamic countries are not. The Palestinians, they're the people. No, they know they have a problem. They have a problem coming up and growing every single day, and they're panicking, and this is their way of panicking.
One second, they know they have that problem, and they believe, like our conceptia, they believe that if they appease those jihadists, then they'll be left alone. But the kibbutzim in southern Israel learned. These were peace lovers who helped the Gazans, who took them for medical treatments, who were very left-wing, but also extremely full of peace and love. And it didn't help them. They were the first to be slaughtered, raped, beheaded.
Well, more than that. I mean, we're talking about, like, you asked a second ago how we feel about, like, being isolated. To me, the most frustrating thing about this is kind of, where's Israel's dignity? You know, like, I heard about the aid going in. I was confused. Why are they sending it?
You're against it.
I'm always against it. I think we can, if we want to send aid, it should be the first thing we do when we have the hostages back happily. It's a non-negotiable. It should not go in beforehand. And I'm massively against it going in beforehand. But now I understand why, right? Netanyahu was preempting what he was hearing happening in the EU. He doesn't want to be condemned this way. So he's saying, look, you're going to come at us and say we're not sending aid, but we are. It's a preemptive measure. And I'm just sick and tired of us bowing down and trying to satiate the kind of their bloodthirsty need to hate on us. Screw them. Like, I'm so over and done. Like, I don't understand why Israel keeps on with this apologetic mentality. We should be condemning them.
Well, you know, I said yesterday, I was in the media a little bit, and I said yesterday that ultimately he said, well, I said, all your friends are leaving you. I said, well, I'm not sure if you've been friends. But, I said, you know what our real friends are doing? Which I would consider the United States, of course. Our real friends have come up with a productive solution. They've sent now contractors to help with the distribution so that it doesn't get into the hands of Hamas, There's private contractors now in Gaza. They've closed off humanitarian zones, and they're asking the families to come and get the food so they can see who's getting the food and that it's not Hamas. Do you think anybody cares that we're trying to find an alternative to a very, very difficult dilemma, which is that the aid is funding the terrorism? Nobody cares. Rawan, you live in Germany. You lived in Paris. How are you seeing what's going on in Europe about Israel? Does anything give you hope?
I don't know about Europe. This is why I decided to leave and come back to the Middle East, not to Syria, not to Lebanon, but to live in Israel.
Welcome, sister.
So that, thank you. I don't know what the plan is in the EU. I watched the continent transform. I watched how the teenagers behave. I watched how the politicians behave. Do you remember the Bataclan? I recommend to all of you.
That was a club that was bombed and shot up in Germany.
They moved in Paris. The
Paris area, yes.
By ISIS.
That's right.
More than 100 persons were killed, bowed down. It took security forces forever to respond. I recommend you watch the documentary of the survivors, and I think it's available on Netflix. When you watch this, you understand that the European Union is not prepared in case dormant terror cells get mobilized. Definitely not in England, definitely not. So I watched Europe become more and more like the Arab world I left. What is confusing to me is that all those who chant on the streets of Amsterdam or in Hamburg in Germany that they want a caliphate. They want to establish.
They're saying it.
It's not a secret.
It's not a secret.
They share it. It's out there. But we like to think they don't mean it. Why? Why infantilize them? They mean it. They're telling you what they want. What's perplexing is if they really wanted to live under Sharia law, why go to London or Paris? Why not go to Turkey? Erdogan likes you. Go there, change Turkey from a secular country to an Islamist one.
Yeah.
Why not go in Iran if you enjoy it? I don't understand.
You know who said that? Nikki Haley said that. She was interviewed in the United States and they said, well, where should the Palestinians go? She says, what about the countries that love Hamas? Go there,
for example.
But we know the answer to that.
Of course.
Because they have a much nicer life in free countries.
Qatar can pamper them. If they can gift Donald Trump a 400 million aircraft, they could have bought an island for the Gazans to just chill for 6 months.
Oh my God, that would be great.
Of course.
I do not think that the West has a solution. Since 9/11, their solution is to appease the Islamists because extremists tend to bomb themselves if they throw an emotional tantrum and you do not give them what they like. And this is what Hamas wants.
I think they're going to come knocking on Israel's door in a few years. Once the Gaza-Palestinian thing moves away, it ends, well, if it ever ends, but I think once it will end, they're all going to come here and they're going to be begging us to save them. Because at the end of the day, what we're doing right now is we are setting the stage of how Western society responds to proper Islamization. And nobody likes it. They're all freaking out. They don't enjoy what it looks like. But the truth is, it's uncomfortable. It's not a positive thing. No one likes to have their husbands at war. No one likes to see what's going on there. These countries, if the Islamization continues, are going to come begging Israel to try and help them. And at that point, it'll be too late. And I think at this point, Israel should have some dignity and say to them, you don't want your relationship with us? Back off, but you're going to come. You're going to need us.
Well, we help them so much with intelligence. Those very countries condemning us, including Spain. Do you know how many people tell me how much Israel helps them intelligence-wise? And yet we've never gone and done that step of saying, you're on your own after what you're doing to us. Ruthie, do you think the government has a game plan for Gaza right now?
I do. I believe the government does have a game plan. And I think that everyone's saying it doesn't. There's just anti-government intellectuals and media people and all of that in Israel.
Usual suspects.
Look, there is a total game plan and we have been achieving it. Israelis are impatient. This war is taking a very long time because although, may I say, it's a blip in history. If you look back and you said a war took a year and a half, 2 years.
Yes.
That's a long time. No, it's not. It's a terribly long time for us because our wars last 3 weeks or 6 days. Exactly. But here's the thing. It would have been over a long time ago. It's taking so long because of these hypocrites in the region and in Washington, because the Biden administration was tying our hands. And because everyone was saying, oh, humanitarian crisis in Gaza, instead of saying, release those hostages and lay down your arms or else, okay? Which is what we were doing. The game plan is to remove Hamas from power, to return all the hostages, and to figure out a day after Gaza. There is a game plan, and we are achieving it. There are also many fronts on this war. We've taken out Hezbollah, all the leaders of Hezbollah, and Hamas, and we're fighting the Houthis. And sadly, we're fighting the European propaganda machine, right, at the same time. We have many fronts in this war, and Iran is the head of the octopus, which we're going to have to target as well. There's going to be no choice.
I don't think that we have a choice.
We don't.
It concerns me
We don't.
Trump, if the negotiations continue with Iran, well, where does that leave us? Is Trump abandoning us? Is he still on board? Is he part of the game plan? Is he really doing all of this with Bibi? These are questions that keep me up at night.
I mean, Iran just pulled out of the negotiations.
So they did?
They said they're not going to the next round.
Well, did we kind of think that wouldn't happen? I mean,
No. I mean,
is it surprising to us?
That's actually good.
it's good.
It's
for us.
excellent.
It's great. We're very happy with it.
Because Israel has no choice whether or not, first of all, the window, I was worried that they were going to sign a deal because the Iranians
Let's push
lie
back.
and cheat and push it back. And I was hoping Trump wouldn't get duped by them.
Yeah.
The one thing, I know that everyone's worried, there's a rift, all this. One thing we are seeing from Washington, and that's even among the isolationists in the administration, is that they are not preventing Israel from doing what it has to do. It's true they made their own deal with the Houthis. They didn't say a word when we started bombing after that deal.
So that's why the negotiations falling apart is so good, because at the end of the day, if the negotiations had come to some sort of deal and Israel wasn't happy about it, we couldn't go against our friends. But if the deal doesn't work, if it doesn't fall apart, then Israel's going to do what it needs to do. And we've been clear about that from the beginning, from the get-go. That was Netanyahu. He said, look, Trump, I don't think your deal is going to work, but if it does, we won't do anything about it. But if it fails, we're coming for them.
And by the way, the liars, Dafka in the woke right, as we call them, in America, the Tucker Carlsons, they lie when they say that Israel is going to force American boots on the ground and all kinds of nonsense like that. Israel does not expect anybody to fight battle.
It'd be nice
just need not to be
exactly
handcuffed by our allies and to have the right weapons to do it and to have the moral support, etc.
So if this happens, which it could happen, there was actually a report, I think, on CNN that they were quoting this morning in the media that Israel's getting ready to attack Iran. Where do you think Syria is going to be in this war? I mean, even rhetorically.
Mark my words, and I know people might question my sanity. I said this so many times on Israeli television. When they asked me, do you think Lebanon or Syria will join the Abraham Accords? Everyone bets on Lebanon. I think both are going to join, but Syria will be first.
Really?
100%. That is because I trust the Israeli intelligence. How many more miracles do you want, people? The Pager operation.
Oh, my God.
Haniyeh killed in Tehran. Nasrallah died not of old age. What more do you want? Because I trust the Israelis who are watching the region like hawks, and we do have, I say we, not that I'm Israeli, not yet.
Oh, you will be.
But I am in this camp. We do have a lot of sensible allies who know what's happening in the region. And the people, the Syrians, the Lebanese, the Iraqis, the Iranians, the beautiful Iranian people, they are sick and fed up of this made-up cause. The Palestinians themselves are sick and fed up of this cause. What is the Palestinian pro-Palestine camp fighting for? What do they want? The eradication of Israel?
Yeah.
Israel is here to stay.
Yeah.
Finally understood it. I think the Syrians realized nobody protested on the streets in the West for us.
500,000
Now, leave me alone. These are the documented deaths. Now, leave me alone. Get off my back. I have nothing to do with your Palestinian cause. Remember, the most important thing Trump asked al-Sharaa is expelling Palestinian terrorists. These were his words. And the Syrians, the presidential palace, did not disagree. They said, of course, they were our enemies as well. They were aligned with the Islamic Republic, with Hezbollah, killed our people as well. We want them out. This is happening. And the Palestinian terrorists, freedom fighters, just the same way they were expelled from Jordan, from Lebanon, from Kuwait. Now this is happening in Syria.
And if Syria wants to survive, I mean, the smartest thing they can do is kind of deal with Israel. I mean, it just makes so much sense. The sanctions will be lifted. They'll have a good partner here, and they can move forward doing whatever they want to do in Syria.
Prosperity. Imagine
it makes so much
what
sense.
This region would look like if we had peace and quiet and the time to actually, and the energy to actually build it together. And that's all we've ever wanted. Okay, so on that very positive note, after 2 very depressing days that we've had here, we go to a very favorite segment of the show, Scumbag of the Week. And like every week, so many scumbags, so little time. But with my friends over here, we're going to be unpacking the worst examples this week. Ruthie, who is the scumbag of your week, dear?
Yair Golan, the head of the misnamed party, the Democrats in Israel. He is a far-left former general who was deputy chief of staff of the IDF, who this isn't the first time he's done this, but it is particularly egregious, so much so that many on the left are freaking out in Israel.
Yeah.
And what he said was, we can't be a country that kills babies as for a hobby.
ישראל בדרך להיות מדינה מוקצת בין העמים. דרום אפריקה של פעם, אם היא לא תחזור ותתנהל כמדינה שפויה. מדינה שפויה לא מנהלת לחימה נגד אזרחים, לא הורגת תינוקות כתחביב, ולא שמה לעצמה מטרות של גירוש אוכלוסייה.
Now, he said other things that were disgusting, but we'll just focus on that because we don't have a lot of time. And of course, the entire jihadi world picked that up, as splashed it on front pages of every newspaper. And then when he said, I'm going to call a press conference to clarify, he doubled down by saying, no, I didn't say our soldiers do it. I said, our government does it and is forcing the soldiers to do it. Now, this is the same guy who in 2016, when he was deputy chief of the IDF staff, on Holocaust Remembrance Day, he stood up and gave this speech to the soldiers about how there are processes going on that are reminiscent of the darkest times in Holocaust history. And if we're not careful, we're going to head in that direction. So he's my scumbag, not only of this week, he's been my scumbag for years.
I agree with you. Like I said, I've been being interviewed in the last 24 hours, and the whole foreign media are obsessed with what he said because they weaponize it against us. And I want to say one thing. I think Israelis don't understand, some of them, the harm they do and the amount that they empower the haters that want to destroy them too. They make no difference. And I'm not sure he understands that damage, and that is ignorance and arrogance. And this guy, I'm hoping that within Israel, he's destroyed his political career. I'm hoping he's destroyed, because my left-wing friends who actually thought, he could be a nice new leader, they're disgusted too. Rawan, who's your scumbag of the week?
I do not feel comfortable labeling a person scumbag, but I'll happily label an entire group.
Okay, good.
My scumbags of this week are the far left, the global far left, and the Israeli far left. I've been here for 10 days, and some of the statements I'm seeing are despicable. And as you said, it echoes stupidity and ignorance. And I'm allergic to stupidity, mostly. I do not understand why don't Israelis speak Arabic? They should be watching the news.
They don't.
You have no idea some of the statements you say, how they are used and weaponized against all of you, religious, non-religious.
They don't care.
Israeli or non-Israeli, wherever you live in the world, as a Jew, you are a target unless you give them your testimony. I hate the Israelis. I swear, I promise you, I have nothing to do with the Zionists. How stupid can one be? I want to share a story with you. There's a book, look it up. It is called Gaza under Hamas, written by Dr. Diane Brenner, a Swedish. In the preface of his book, the author who wrote it says, in 1998, I had the chance to interview Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, the founder of Hamas, and he asked him back then, do you think that your project is viable? And he promised him with full certainty, read it. He said, by 2022, Palestine will begin to become Islamized. They had an estimation. He said that back in 1998. And by the way, look at Hamas's meeting in 1993 in Philadelphia. They are following a plan, and you are reacting emotionally to details during a war. A war is ugly. But who chose the war? Hamas and their masters. And if you go against the war, if you don't want a war, you want to stop it, and at the same time you demand bring them home, how would you like them to come back home if it's not for war? If you have a magic alternative, please do share it with us and embarrass your government. Tell them how this should have been dealt with.
Here. Yeah. Wow. That was fire. And you're 100% correct. I was debating somebody from the Meretz, this party of this guy, and he was like, all hostages have come home through deals. Yes, but what preceded the deal? They live in La La Land. Meira K, who's your scumbag this week, dear?
My scumbag of the week are the Sinwar brothers, who hopefully have been eliminated, although one of them was found semi-alive in the morgue, even though they thought he was dead, which I love. But there are three brothers. One of them, Zachariah, is an intellect who has set up all of Yahyar's. His entire strategy came from his understanding of the Israeli people from his brother. He was eliminated this week. Muhammad, who was running Hamas, has been eliminated this week. And so they are my scumbags/heroes because they're no longer with us.
Bye-bye, Sinwar family.
And I think it's an important thing to remember that during this war, there's so much hatred going on and anger and frustration at the media. But at the end of the day, who's winning?
Thank you, Meira. We need that little pep talk. So in keeping with Ruthie and Rawan here, my scumbag this week is Ehud Olmert, who was the former Prime Minister of Israel, who went to jail for corruption. He was also the mayor of Jerusalem before my time there as deputy mayor. And everybody knew in the city of Jerusalem that he loved nothing more than a little and a big bribe sometimes. Anyway, eventually caught up with him. He wound up in jail for a couple of years, and he came out of jail transformed into a Yair Golan type character, even though this man started off in the Likud as a center-right politician and as somebody, as the mayor of Jerusalem who believed in a united city. I don't know what happened to him in jail, but all of a sudden he's come out super, super, super left-wing and would rather burn the whole country down as long as Bibi goes down than actually do something good for the country that he once led. So every media appearance he can do in the West, in BBC, wherever, and talk about Israel in the worst ways. You see, the difference between him and Yair Golan is that Ehud Olmert speaks English. And so he goes around the world telling everybody how terrible we are, how we're committing genocide. And he's only doing it for one reason. He doesn't really believe it. But if anything can bring Bibi down, including burn the whole house down, there you will find Ehud Olmert. And so, honestly, you are a washed out criminal, you are disgraceful, and you did one or two good things as prime minister. You've now ruined your legacy. You've become a sellout for clicks and a sellout for haters who, Mr. Olmert, don't love you anymore because you're selling your people out. So you are my scumbag of the week. Oof, ladies, that's always like a little bit of therapy.
Yeah.
In the middle of
Very
a week
good.
that we don't have to pay for. So let's be grateful. Okay, so now let's finish on the wonderful, positive note that we like to finish our show with Hero of the Week. And for so many scumbags, there's many, many more heroes. So Meira, starting back with you.
There have been so many heroes this week. We've got like Yuval Efel, Tila Gaze. There's like so many things that have happened. But my hero of the week is actually an unnamed woman. Okay. She was sitting on a bus, an IDF officer, as an Islamic terrorist or whatever, showed up behind her and spat on her. And this video, instead of just disappearing, instead of her just kind of be like, someone spat on me and moving on, she made it go viral. the whole country was up in arms, and this guy didn't even arrest him. He actually gave himself in because he was so afraid of the ramifications. And I think this is exactly the way that we need to be responding to everything. Somebody comes at you, does something that you're not even sure if it's illegal, but they come at you, you respond with fire. Use the media against you. And I absolutely love her. I don't know her name, but God bless you.
No, she didn't let him get away with it. Many people would have just said, "Dog, it happens." She's like, "I'm a soldier in a uniform in the state of Israel and I get spotted on a bus. It's not acceptable."
Right.
Good for her. We like women like that here on this show. Rawan, who's your hero?
My hero of this week is Israeli President Isaac Herzog.
Which you met.
I did. I had the honor of meeting him and his wife. And I found it very, very significant for him, who comes from the left, to call Yair Golan out and to ensure that he remains a uniting figure, because this is what Israel needs. You cannot afford, during such a war, when Israel is under scrutiny, under the microscope, having your fights or your dirty laundry hung out there. They want to have a fight, they want to kill each other, do it behind closed doors. So I truly appreciated that someone who commands everybody's respect went out to say, no, this is a no-go, because Yair Golan promoted a very old blood libel against the Jews. Who on earth goes and kills babies for hobbies? Can you think of a single person who sends soldiers, your children, to kill Gazan babies for fun? That was despicable.
Absolutely despicable, but we know who does do that. Hamas, as they did. Ruthie, who's your hero this week?
My hero is Tzvika Mor, the head of the Forum Tikva Forum. Why he's a hero is that aside from the tragic fact that he has a son who's a hostage in Gaza and has been for 19 months, he has to go up against not only Hamas, but many other of the hostage families who try to silence him because he doesn't agree with them that you have to end the war before victory. He believes that you have to get all the hostages out by applying military pressure and other kinds of pressure. That's why he's against all humanitarian aid going into Gaza.
Yes.
But he has kept up his spirit, even though he's devastated about his son rotting in those tunnels in Gaza. And yet he is a source of inspiration and enlightenment. And we need more people like him.
Absolutely. And look, nobody should judge anybody of the hostage families, but I think there has been a politicization by the people who hate Bibi, and they'll do anything. They grab onto different causes. So the Bibi haters grab onto the judicial reform. Half of them didn't even know what judicial reform meant, but hey, whatever. And now, unfortunately, and I think that they made a mistake strategically to politicize the hostage forum. And, like I said, there's no judgment here. These people are going through the worst thing that any parent could ever go through. And Tzvika Mor is coming out on the other side saying, not everybody feels the same way, or not everybody. It's hard for me to imagine either side of this argument, honestly, as a parent. It's rough. But yeah, Tzvika Mor is definitely a hero for so many different reasons.
And I just want to add, his son's birthday is this week. And he's inviting to his son's birthday the families of fallen soldiers and wounded soldiers. Wow. That's what he's doing, because he's paying tribute to all those soldiers who either lost their lives or got wounded looking for the hostages and trying to beat Hamas. And that's another wonderful gesture.
Exactly. And I don't think people understand that these are the very difficult conversations that we have in Israel. Last night I was sitting with a bunch of my girlfriends, and, some from the right, some from the left, and we were having these real discussions. They were not populist statements. They were like, what do we do? Do we sacrifice living soldiers for dead hostages? How much do we sacrifice for the hostages? These are real, painful conversations. They're not propaganda. And this is what a lot of people miss about the conversations going on, intelligent conversations going on in this country, that we're in a lose-lose. But we do have those discussions because we're not automatons that follow slogans as a way of life. Okay, my hero this week, bringing down from very difficult, heroes to something a little happier, but a hero indeed, Yuval Raphael. How that woman, young woman, who is a survivor of the Nova massacre, who hid under 7 bodies for 8 hours, pretending to be dead so that she could get out of that place alive. How you come out of that, how you then go through all that trauma, post-trauma, ongoing trauma, because she still has friends in Gaza in those tunnels. And she kind of picks herself up, goes through a competition. People think she was just appointed as the singer. No. She went through our own little Star is Born, The Voice competition here to be selected to go to Basel in Switzerland to look at all those haters who are booing at her, throwing things at her, making gestures to kill her. All of this is going on. And she gets there. She does the performance of her life. 2 people are trying to run into the stage with paint. She's going through all of this. She gives the performance of her life. She's got a beautiful song. She's got a beautiful performance. And then at the end of it, she says, Am Yisrael Chai.
Thank you, Europe! Am Yisrael Chai!
To me, that was, I was saying to Rawan earlier, these are the things that make me cry. The haters don't make me cry. The lovers, the heroes, that makes me cry. And that woman in that moment was a hero. And the whole world saw her as a hero because she was elected by the popular vote. So all those countries that are hating on Israel and are hating on her, your people don't agree with your left-wing governments, like in Spain, like in France, that gave Yuval Raphael the maximum 12 points. And that's why she became the second. So to me and to the whole country in this very difficult week, we have to look to our heroes. And this young woman is a hero indeed. And on that positive note, ladies, we leave you for another week. And we pray, as we do every week, that by next week we have our hostages home and this whole nightmare is ended and Hamas is no longer living on our borders. Thank you for watching.
Amen.
Amen.